Hey y'all, hey, it's JJ Conway. Welcome to Building Wealth Together, where our goal is to help you walk in abundance and leave a legacy. It's Wealth Building Wednesday, where we answer your money questions with style and grace. To ask your question, go to buildingwealthtogether.com and click Ask JJ or leave a voicemail at 1-833-4-ASK-JJC. Normally we'd answer questions, but today we've got some wealth building teaching instead.
Hey everybody, it's JJ Conway. I want to welcome you to Building Wealth Together. I am super excited for our guest today. You are in for a treat. I want you to call 3 or 4 sister friends and have them tune in. Forward this podcast or do something because your girlfriends need to hear this expert. Linda Hannon of Real Family Finance teaches women the 5 fundamentals of money management. Her signature course, the Fast Money Management Program, is designed to teach women the fundamentals. It's a practical, hands-on course that gives women the resources they need to create a financial plan that is simple to use. How do you like that, huh? You know, so many times we're out there and these financial planners try to make it seem like money is so complicated, but it's really not. Linda, welcome to Building Wealth Together. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, JJ, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here. You're just so inspiring to me at FinCon that I'm super excited that we can partner together to encourage more women to take charge of their finance. Can you tell us a little bit about Real Family Finance and how you came to this walk?
Oh, I'd be happy to. It was actually kind of a sideways journey. I've actually spent the last 30 years in corporate finance and as an accountant and ultimately as a chief financial officer. And I specialize in both public and private companies doing turnarounds, which means I would go into a company that was in complete chaos and help them get straightened out and figure out how they needed to get their money in order so that they could survive. So did it for a long time, loved it. Actually, 10 years ago, started my own business and to do it. And I was at a networking event about 2 years ago, and a woman came up to me and asked me if I did for people what I did for businesses because she said her finances were a disaster. And I kind of thought about it. I was like, well, I don't typically, but I love the part about teaching my business owners how money works. I was like, this could be something I could help you with. And when I stood up at the networking group and did the spiel that you do, I said to the group, I said, so-and-so asked me if I would teach her a little bit about personal finance. Is there anybody else that would be interested in something like that? And 15 women raised their hands.
Wow.
And I know. And I was blown away. I was like, oh, okay, there's clearly a need. And at this point, it's a networking group, so there's people that I know. And I was like, there's clearly a need here. Let me see if I can help these women out. So I started teaching the class live, and I was absolutely blown away at the just what a little bit of information could do to help these women. I would teach an hour and a half, a 2-hour class on the fundamentals of finance and just show people how they fit together. And by that, I kind of define them. I have 5 fundamental pieces that I talk about. There's budgeting, there's debt management, there's saving, there's investing, and there's retirement planning. And just by giving people an overview of how they worked and how they work together, I would see physical changes in these women. They would go from being stressed out when they walked in the door and have fear and be concerned about their money to just giving them like a basis to start working from. They would physically relax. And then I started working with some of them one-on-one, and I saw more changes. I saw a woman who was afraid to buy a house who bought a house. I saw women who got out of debt. I saw women who stopped fighting with their husbands about money because they finally knew how it worked and had a common language that they could talk about. And,
Yes.
And I decided that I needed to keep going with this. It was just, it was so satisfying, and it was so exciting to see, and it's so needed that I formed Real Family Finance, and I built this online class because I thought that was the best way to kind of reach people. And it's now an 8-week program. And at the end of the 8 weeks, women actually not only understand these 5 fundamental pieces, but they actually have physical financial plans for themselves. And one of the kind of cool things that I've seen along the way is that, so we all know money seems complicated. There's a ton of information out there. You go and Google anything on the internet and you get so much information back. And we find ourselves focusing on a piece of finance. I see a lot of people focusing on budgeting and trying to make their money work. I see a lot of people trying to focus on debt and how can I get out of debt? And the problem is that they're so busy focusing on those 2 things, that they're not saving, or they're not saving enough money. They have no investment and no investment strategy because they have nothing to invest because they haven't saved anything. And they don't understand how retirement works, so they don't understand how much money they need to be saving for retirement. So they're not working on that piece of their life. And I see more and more women that are getting to be late 50s, and they're starting to say, okay, retirement's like around the corner, and they realize they're not prepared. So I'm so excited that I have the opportunity to teach women how they make the money in their lives work.
Well, I think right there you highlighted one of the biggest reasons why it is so important for women to learn about money. What do you think stops women from figuring out how to manage their money?
Let me ask you a question, Deidre. When you were growing up, did your family talk about money?
Only that we didn't have enough.
Yeah, mine as well. But we're not taught to talk about it, which is so interesting because it's like such an important part of your life. But I think that, especially as women, we're sort of taught maybe it's the husband's responsibility to manage the money, or it's got to be hard, so I probably can't do it. There's all these like stories in our head that go around, like just like we have these stories about I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not thin enough, or I'm not, in my case, I'm not tall enough. We have these stories that
short people rule.
I know. Yeah, they do, especially in my house.
Well, I see it though. Even in women who, like myself, even though I had a dad around, a lot of the people that I serve don't have fathers involved. But even though I had a dad involved, the mom did everything. But there's still some kind of societal or cultural bias against women learning about money.
And you know what's really interesting is that when you think about it, and the studies show that women are actually the ones in the household that do most of the spending. They pay the bills. They're the ones that do the grocery shopping and the errands, and they're paying for the kids' activities. And even though they do most of the spending, somehow there's some assumption that the husband in the family is responsible for the planning. And they typically will do the things like 401k and retirement planning or buying insurance. So there's this weird separation that definitely goes on. And the thing is it's all stories. It is all mindset in our head that we have to change. And I know you do a lot in your podcast about talking about that. And I think it's something that we just have to keep talking about and talking about and talking about until we as women start to turn that story around.
That's right. We have to do it. Here I am trying not to cough, and here you are coughing.
I know. Sorry.
Well, here's the thing. If somebody really, really wants to just take the plunge and embrace her money, I know you gave us kind of your 5 fundamentals earlier, but what does that process look like for her?
I think it starts with what we just said. You have to start thinking about your mindset separately. The second is you have to find a support system. I find that managing money is very similar to dieting in that,
oh dear,
even after, I know, nobody wants to diet, but It's very similar. It's like you can go and you can learn everything that you need to learn. And I'll share a story with you in a second. You can learn everything that you need to learn, but then actually doing it is really hard. And I think just like with dieting, if you put yourself inside a support system where you're surrounding yourself with people that are doing the same thing and that you're getting some consistent guidance and direction, you have the best chance for moving forward. And there's lots of great programs out there, but you have to find them. And so going back to the story, a little bit embarrassing, but I'll tell the truth. Even though I was an accountant and I was doing all these great financial things for all the companies that I worked for, at home back in my 20s and 30s, I was a financial disaster. I was just like every other woman out there. Even though I had an education in it and I was doing it every day, I was a mess. I had at one point after I got divorced, I had a ton of debt. It took me, after I finally decided I was getting out of debt, it took me 4 years to clear it. And you know what I did to celebrate? You get one guess.
Say that again?
So I said, I'm going to give you one. I said, guess what I did to celebrate getting out of debt?
Went to more debt.
Well, basically, I bought a house I couldn't afford. And
Okay.
And my son and I literally lived in this house for 3 years with no furniture.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And so it was like, I am every woman. I am every woman. Even though I had every reason not to be every woman, I was all of us. And it wasn't until my son went to middle school. The first day of middle school, he came home with that, how they come home with a backpack full of papers and forms and all that stuff you have to fill out. And on one of them, he had to pick an elective because it was the first year the kids rotated classes, and so they had to pick one elective. And I think he was in like 7th grade, but they already were putting him on like career paths, and you had to pick a path. You could be on the college path, the trade path, or the general studies path. And my son wanted to be a pilot. So he said, Mom, I need to be on the college path. And I will never forget sitting at that kitchen table and looking at him, and I realized he's going to college in like 7 years, and I don't have any money saved for that. And to me, that was like a life-changing moment because I was like sitting there saying, I have been playing games with money for 30-something years at this point, and I have been kidding myself. But my son is looking at me with all this faith that I'm going to make this happen and help him make this happen. And I have created a situation for myself where it's never going to happen unless something changes.
Wow.
And for me, that was the day my mindset shifted. And then I'm a pretty driven person. I was like, all right, I got to figure this out. So I went out, and the first thing I found out was that there was no place to just go to say, somebody help me, tell me what I need to know. I had to go and I had to learn a piece here and a piece there and a piece over there. And it took a lot of time, and it was scary. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. And it took like literally 10 years to kind of come up with what now I understand about how money works. And that's part of why I'm teaching the class that I teach now, is because there's no need for anybody to have to go through what I went through to figure it out.
That's right.
It's right down to like, okay, so another honest story. When I went through the 5 pieces, I could figure out the budget. I could figure out the debt. I'd gotten myself out of debt before, so I knew how to do that. The savings plan, I could figure out. I knew I had so many years till my son went to college, and that was clearly my first priority, so I could figure out what I had to do to make that happen. But then when I got to the next one, which is investing, it scared me to death. And I was sort of like, even though I did it all day long, I was like, it was overwhelming. I was like, there was like all these numbers, and you were supposed to like look at these 100-page financial statements to figure out if you should invest in something or not. And there were all these terms, and I was a finance person, and I found it incredibly confusing and intimidating. So
I've been there.
Yep. So what did I do? I went out and hired a financial advisor. And what I thought was great. And I took all this money that I'm now saving and I gave it to this advisor and I thought all was good. 2 years later, I got a letter in the mail from the federal court saying that my advisor and his firm, who was a top New York firm, a well-known name that I will not mention, but everybody would recognize the name, had been found guilty in a class action lawsuit of misrepresenting stocks and overcharging commissions. And I lost so much money. Everything that I had been working so hard for my son's college, I lost so much money. And so even at that, I was like, okay, you can't just give your money over. You've got, I advocated. I said, I don't understand it, so instead of figuring it out, I'm going to let somebody else manage it for me. And that was the wrong thing to do. I was like, I need to figure this out. So I had to go back and jump back in and learn how investing works. And I actually learned, shockingly, that it doesn't have to be complicated, which blew my mind. So, and I think that's sort of the theme with everything that I learned. There were so many moving pieces. Once I figured out, though, the basics and how to put them together, it wasn't anywhere near as hard or as complicated as I thought it was going to be. I mean, you got to stay on top of it. You got to look at it all the time. You can't just give it to somebody and say, manage it for me. That doesn't work. But it doesn't need to be hard or complicated. And that's, I think if there's no other message I can share with your audience today, it's that, is that it doesn't have to be hard. And that and every single woman out there can do it and needs to do it. Because, okay, two scary statistics that I have recently heard. Number one, 95% of women are going to have to manage their money on their own at some time in their life. And for most of them, it'll be after they turn 65 because they're going to lose their family members to either death or illness or divorce. So I don't know about you, but I don't want to be learning anything new at 65 that's complicated or potentially complicated. And the second one was that, yeah, and then the second one was that 45% of women drop to the poverty level within 5 years of their husbands passing away because they don't know how to manage their money. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Really?
Yes. That was the statistic that came out from New York Life. I recently was at a seminar, and that was a number I was like, that's absolutely frightening. Absolutely frightening.
45%. Did I hear you right? 45% of women fall into poverty.
Yep, within 5 years because they don't know how to manage their money, the money that's left to them.
And I've got to interject here because this speaks to one of my stories that I tell about partners. I had a friend whose father cut off his life insurance because a family friend of theirs, the man had died, and the wife, the widow, was out living large on the insurance money. And he told my friend's mother, his mom, and his wife, he said, I'm cutting off this insurance, and because I'm cutting off this insurance because I don't want you living a large life off of my hard work. And I told my friend, I said, I know. I said, wait a second. Your mom has been following your dad around all of her life. She has set aside her life to rear you guys and follow him and support him. That money is hers. She deserves to go live the high life. And my friend did not understand. He disagreed with me. And it's a good thing for my husband because I actually really like this guy. And in that moment, I said, he is not the one. But I had no idea it was that much, but I see it in the military. The women follow the men around, and then when they get ready to retire, the men kick them to the curb and go get somebody younger. And so they actually passed a law on that. You know, if you've been married to a military member for over 10 years, you have access to their retirement. And so when you give me this stat that 45% of women fall into poverty, we've got to do something about that. So I'm
We
really
totally do.
excited that you're working in this space. So tell us some more about what you're doing here, about how you're helping people not let that happen to them.
It's through my class. It's the class. It's an 8-week class, and it walks women through change in mindset, all the way through setting up, understanding how budgets really work and how to set one up. It includes debt management, how to get out of debt, and I do it in a realistic way. Like, I apologize to anybody out there that is a big fan of the get out of debt fast thing, but I have a firm belief that you might get yourself in debt, but you have to still have a life. You can't make your life stop for years and years and years while you're getting yourself out of debt. You've got to balance it, which leads into the third one, which is savings. You need to understand, before you understand, you have to be able to set some savings goals for yourself, and that can be anything from retirement to I want a new house, I want a new car, I want a fur coat, whatever you want. You should be setting savings for your goals for yourself, and you should be working on them like from day one. Because what I frequently hear people say is that, oh, I'm working on my debt and my money's really tight, so when I get out of debt, I'll start saving then. And what happens is that when they get close to being out of debt, they start to get comfortable because the debt's gone down, and then they buy something new, so they have new debt, which means they never start saving. Versus versus if you start saving today and you're saving right along with paying down your debt, and it doesn't have to be a lot, it's more just a placeholder in your life, it becomes part of your life. So hopefully, as you finish paying off some debt, you can then take the money that you were putting towards debt and start using it to build up your savings. And it's not something new, it's just shifting money around. So it's easier to make it happen. Then I teach my really easy principles on investing. And finally, I teach women how retirement works, because your money in retirement works entirely different than it does today. And it's something nobody talks about, but you think about it today, most of us think, okay, my paycheck hit the bank this week and I have $1,000. How am I going to spend it? But when you get to retirement, it turns around. And instead, you're thinking, I need to spend $1,000. Where's that money going to come from? Because you have no more income. So you have to start preparing yourself for that, the change in thought process, and making sure that you have enough money saved so that you can continue to live the life that you want. So I teach those 5 things together. And and it's actually kind of cool in the class. I have a 3-step process when I teach. So for each of those topics, I teach how it works and what the theories are, the what's, the whys, the what fors, all that good stuff. Then I have created within the class a fake family, and I call them affectionately my favorite fake family. They are Joe and Amanda Banks and their daughter Emily. And for each one of the segments, I show the students how it actually plays out in a family's life. So they can see what the real numbers look like. They can see the decisions that the family has to go through. They see the arguments between the husband and wife about how money's being spent and how they're prioritizing. And then the third thing is that for each section, the students actually build their own plan. So at the end of the 8 weeks, like literally in 60 days, they will have a financial plan that will get them to wherever they need to go.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, it's really fun. And you know what's actually happening, and I didn't plan on, but it's happening, is most of the time women are starting by themselves. They're in a situation where they just can't handle the money anymore in their lives, whether it's they're waking up in the middle of the night saying, I'm not sure there's enough money in the bank to cover the checks I wrote today, or they're tired of fighting with their husbands about money, and it's like at the point it's destroying their relationship. Or they're saying, I make a lot of money, but I don't know where it goes, and I'm not sure I'm financially okay, and I'm not even really sure what okay means. They get to the point they can't stand it anymore, and they say, I need to change something for myself. So they take the class, and then they get a little bit in, and they get excited about what they're doing, and they pull their husbands in. And because it's an online class, their husbands can then join them and do the class with them. So they end up with the same set of numbers. They've watched the same videos. They have the same language that they can start using. And that alone can cause like these huge fundamental shifts in their households.
Yes,
And
yes.
I've seen it happen, and it's like I have one student, Jenna, and I'll never forget, she called me. And I hadn't heard from her for a while because she'd worked with the program, and then I hadn't heard from her a while. She called me, and she's like, Linda, my husband and I have not had a single disagreement about money in months. She's like, it has changed our lives, just not fighting about money. She's like, I can't even believe how much time we used to spend fighting about money. And she says, and we've gotten all that time back, not to mention the stress and those pressure and everything is just gone.
I think that was one of the things that really stood out to me in the beginning that you talked about, and I've seen this as well, the restoration of relationships and the physical, tangible results, whether it's improving your relationship with yourself, improving your relationship with a spouse, improving your relationship with whoever is financially dependent on you, like your kids or maybe your parents if they're older, but then the physical changes that happen in our lives when we take charge of our money.
You can't even describe it until you see it, and then you're just like, oh my God. I had a woman who came to one of my classes when I was teaching them live, and she came in, she arrived late, she slid into a seat in the back at the back of the room, and she sat the entire 2 hours with her purse on her lap and her arms around her purse. I kind of was watching her. I was a little concerned about her. I was like, all right, I'll be trying to touch base with her at the end of the class because she's clearly stressed beyond belief. Finished the class, and I looked around. I'm like, okay, guys, was that helpful? You know, if anybody's got questions, whatever, you know how you wrap up a class. She looked at me. She plunks her purse on the table, and she says, why didn't anybody just explain this to us?
Yep.
She's like, why have we made money so complicated? She's like, this clearly doesn't need to be as hard as we're all making it out to be. And I was like, yes. It was but seeing the physical change in her just in that hour and a half was amazing. It was so rewarding.
I believe it. And that's the thing, like when people come to me and they feel like, oh, I don't know what I can do. It's impossible to be out of debt. It's impossible to live without taking on debt. And I try so hard to explain to them the difference in how I physically felt the day I wrote the last check for debt. It was like this huge burden lifted off of my shoulders that I never even knew was there because you're just so used to it. And so I love this class. I love this, what you're doing in people's lives. I'm like, man, I need to sit in her class too. This is fantastic. You know, I actually did go out to your website and I played around. I think it's a little facetious because I am a financial planner by nature, so none of the standard profiles fit me. But I went out there and took your little quiz, and it was just so much fun. And it was just so much to think about. And then I loved seeing my little Susie. I'm the Susie Saver.
You're the Susie Saver.
I'm the Susie Saver, which is interesting because at my core, even though I teach people this stuff, you know, I say like Dave Ramsey says, the Lord makes me teach people this stuff because I love to spend money so much, right? So I thought it was hilarious that I came out to be a Susie Saver, but you know, it was like I can see that you put your heart and your soul into everything that you're doing to help people change their lives. Now, I want you to tell people how they can get in touch with you, but before we do that, I have one more question that I want to ask you because, you know, a lot of times people, you know, especially in the socioeconomic climate, nobody wants to be exclusionary. Nobody wants to be sexist and racist and exclude anybody. So let me ask you, you know, don't men need to learn about money too? I mean, why are you tailoring this to women? You've given me a lot of good reasons, but there's guys out there now that need to know about money too.
There is absolutely guys out there that need to learn about money, which is why one of the reasons that I called the company Real Family Finance, because my goal is to expand over time and have classes for not just women, but men and children as well. The reason, though, that I separate women and men, well, two reasons. Number one, women and men learn differently, and especially when it comes to things around numbers and math. And I find when I'm talking to men, because I do have men that I have taught this class to as well, they have a tendency to be much more top level, I'm planning something. I'm going to jump into the stock market. I'm going to start doing stock crazy stuff. They have a tendency to be more adventuresome, I think, in many cases. And I don't mean to exclude some women that might be that way. The other thing I wanted to do, though, was I wanted women to have a place that they felt that they could come and be comfortable talking about money. Because, like, I'm sure you've seen the studies, when you look at how women perform in a girls' school versus a combined boy and girl school, that girls have a tendency to be more quiet in mixed company. I wanted there to be a place where women could come and talk about everything having to do with money and be able to do not just the higher level planning things that I know men have a tendency to be drawn to, but because women are the ones who are paying the day-to-day bills and they're buying the groceries and they're the ones who are setting up the kids' activities, they have different needs when to talking about how to manage money, because they have that unique perspective of they need to not just be down in the weeds of spending every day, but they need to be able to also do the planning. So it's a different way of looking at it. So I wanted to make sure that they had a place to go to make that happen.
I love it. 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 So now, Linda, let me ask you to tell us how people can get a hold of you to learn more. Like, they've definitely got to go to your website. We're going to link it in the show notes so that they can go take the fun little quiz that I took today. And how can they work with you if they want to learn more about this and they want to be able to learn about money in a judgment-free, very warm and welcoming and environment that makes finance easy for them?
So a couple things. Definitely check out the website, realfamilyfinance.com. There is a free personality test, because I believe that money should be fun. So I figured let's start with fun. You can go and find out exactly what kind of personality you are. I have a free on-demand 1-hour class that I think it's what women need to know to be successful with money. And that's at realfamilyfinance.com/free. You can go sign up for that. I also have a podcast that you can find on iTunes and Stitcher and everywhere else there's podcasts. It's called Your Money Made Easy. And I also have a women's-only interactive Facebook group called Your Money Made Easy as well that you can find on Facebook. I always love to hear from people so I can help them and frequently. So one of the things I firmly believe is if you have a question, you should ask it, because I guarantee if you have the question, other women have the same question. So getting your questions out there, and not only will you get yours answered, but I guarantee you'll be helping other people.
And that's one of the key things about what we've been talking about tonight is you're helping women find their voice with respect to money, and you're helping women overcome these cultural and historical biases that tell us that women can't hang when it comes to finance things. Well, I'll tell you one good finance thing that I just did. I signed up for your website. I went onto your Facebook page. I went and got my free guide and my free class. So already
Yay.
I'm winning with money today.
I'm so excited. Thank you, JJ.
Now, look, I'll do my best. I'll be overbearing and answer too many questions in your form, but I want to be there to support you because I really love what you're doing. I think that this is so powerful.
Totally love what you're doing as well. You know, and the more of us out there doing it, the more it's going to make it easy for women to find the help that they need.
Yes, absolutely, and it's so empowering. You know, one of the things, and I resisted this year focusing on it because I lost too many subscribers last year. But domestic violence is very, very important to me, and I am a survivor of domestic violence, and so I did a whole thing last year on how money management really empowers women to get out of those situations. And so it's very, very personal to me. And I just feel like we have got to work together because, like you said, women are less likely to speak up in a mixed crowd, and we tend to fall into those roles. And what you've done is you have just cracked open the money mystery box, and you have made money management easy for us to understand. This stuff is not complicated, but it just feels that way until we get into what you've put together. So everybody who's out there listening, I encourage you to go right now to realfamilyfinance.com/free. You can sign up on her Facebook page. Yeah, Your Money Made Easy. You'll see Linda's picture there. I want to encourage you to jump in and learn with Linda.
Oh, I like that. That might be tagline.
Before we close out, Linda, do you have any last words for our audience?
My last words to your audience would be, do not give up. Do not buy into anybody telling you that you cannot manage your money, that you cannot figure it out, that you can't be wealthy, because you can be all of those things. And all you need to do is just reach out and look for the people that are there that can help you. I'm telling you, it is so worth the peace that you will find, the ability to be confident about every financial decision that you need to make, and most of all, thinking about your future and making sure that you're taking care of yourself. I got to tell you, it ends with one little tiny selfish piece, is that I know when I retire, I want people to play with. So I need all of the women out there to make sure that they're taking care of themselves so they can be out there playing too.
Yes, sister. We're going to be out there playing together. All right, everybody. I want to thank you for joining us on today's podcast. Make sure you share it, like it, subscribe, do everything that social media needs to highlight what we're doing here. Our special guest today has been Linda Hannon from Real Family Finance. I'm your hostess with the mostest, JJ Conway. You can find me on the web at jjconway.org. You can also access our Building Wealth Together School at buildingwealthtogether.com. Y'all take care and be blessed.
Love the podcast? Be sure to like, subscribe, and forward to 3 friends. You can ask a question or take a life-changing class at buildingwealthtogether.com. Now, go walk in abundance and leave a legacy.